Okay, I went live, and now I'll make the
Yes.
post on PWS.
Oh yeah.
So
Hold on.
there's the post on PWS.
Okay.
Tumblr
Oh,
out
PWS. I already
there,
have it in the search.
and I hope it Tumblr is so slow because I have this new interface already. It sucks, donkey ball.
Why? I don't. Doesn't bother me.
Oh, it's so freaking slow. It is horribly slow, and
See,
nothing
it
works
doesn't.
like it used to. It's horrible. I hate it, and it looks
See,
terrible.
for me, it's not. It's not that bad for me. I mean, it does have its glitches, and it's better today. But it's larger and it's got a little bit more detail. I
Okay.
like it. You know,
Oh, okay.
it's
Well, I'll see. I probably will get used to it, like I've
that's
gotten
it.
everything. I used to be one of these people to always say, "Yeah, it's cool, Tumblr, go ahead. I will not complain before I haven't really tried it and before I haven't used it for a couple of days." But this, I used it now, I have it now, like for 3 or 4 days, and it sucks donkey balls. I don't really like it, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay.
Alrighty then.
Alrighty. Let's start the thing.
Let's start. Oh, so let's go here.
And I'm curious whether this will work. Do you hear the sound?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I had to rebuild that. Hello and welcome to In Conversation. And I just saw I had it on Tumblr, on PWS. It's in conversation, not in conversation. But who cares? The nth conversation 29. Oh my God.
Really?
On
It's over
April,
3 years.
it's amazing. On April 4th of 2020, and I have to put my hand. I had to use hand lotion on my hands because thanks to all the washing hands and all the disinfection stuff, I have the hands of a 90-year-old laundry woman. It is crazy. And hello to the chat. Who's on the chat? Jennifer is on the chat. And belated happy birthday, Jennifer. I saw it today. I am sorry. I haven't been on Tumblr too much lately. Um Heiko is on the chat. 29 already. Yes, I have become 29, but it was already in August. Amy Montico also on the chat. Hello. 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 Um do we still have to introduce ourselves? Well, it might be one or the other person watching who hasn't watched us before. With me in conversation, my friend and fellow photographer, and I say friend because the camera is on, and Fernando, Dr. Fern, all things Fern on Tumblr, also the admin of luxlit.net. And yours truly, my name's Pete. I like pictures, but you know that probably because you're on my channel. We've been doing this. The
What are your Tumblr credentials, please?
My Tumblr credentials. Alok Sharma on the chat. Hello. Tumblr, my Tumblr is twoom. That is TVOOM, and you will also find me on Instagram at twoom photo in one word. My other Tumblr is twoom365, and I'm also one of the admins of photosworthseeing.tumblr.com. So that should be enough. We will talk about something very interesting. I think it's interesting because I chose the topic due to the lack of inspiration coming from Fern, because I have to share that, right? He messaged me, he said, will we do a conversation? And I said, yeah. And he said, what when? And I said, Saturday? And then it was last week. And then I said, I can't because work stuff, right? And I said, what are we gonna talk about? And he said, well, I don't know. Let's do it just because for the morale. So we'll do it for the morale. And I chose a topic because I think it's really an interesting topic. I think it can become an interesting topic. Amateur photography versus professional photography versus art photography. Are there? So this is not something, at least not in my personal opinion, something that we can really draw lines, right? And at least I don't think so. But we're going to talk. We will talk about that. Where are the lines? Are there lines? Especially, I think, especially interesting, the distinction between amateur photography and professional photography, and then amateur photography and art photography, and amateur and professional photography and art photography. So I think very interesting, and I hope. Hello, James, also on the chat, and Bud is on the chat. Hello, Wayland Whitney. Bud is on the chat. So I'm really looking forward to this because I don't know about you, Fern, but I am fortunate enough, on the one hand side, fortunate enough. On the other hand, it's still weird, but I can still work, so I can still go outside, and it's weird. It's weird to say I'm allowed to go to work. It's weird to have a paper in your pocket from your employer, right? That tells that states that your job is essential and that you're allowed to go outside. So, but what about you? Are you locked in, Fernando?
No, one of the advantages that I have, and I think like in the area where you live, I mean, you don't live in central Munich, you live outside, correct? So you're not like
I
in the
live
center of.
I no, I live outside.
So you, I think, have because which we never went to. Like you told me that you had that forest area where you go and you take photographs often, and so you're not in a heavily populated area. With me, it's even better because I live in a town really of, if you count the university students who live here, it might be like maybe 45 to 50,000, but the population is in the 30,000, 35,000 range. Lots of farmland, which is a lot of it is the universities. I mean, it's a huge agricultural campus. Um, but I do get to go to work because I also do essential work because I do, what is it that I do? Technical support for education. So I'm essential. I can work from home, but my colleague and I, my friend Steve, who I've put up with, and he's put up with me for over 12 years, he chose to go in and work because one of the things for us, I mean, we have our separate offices. We have a nice area. It's in a basement. It's isolated to begin with. Um, but it's really great a lot of times with the kind of work that we do to be able to just talk with each other. And yes, you can do it via Zoom, but we also just get along so well that that it's almost like a relief and a release. Plus, also the town where I live, and I've been shooting video, or I shot video for 3 days of the campus and where I live and walking around and blah blah blah. It is empty. It is empty. Last night I went for like a 20-minute ride, 10 minutes each way to go get some stuff at one of the markets. It's a little further away from where I live. And I saw maybe four people on bicycles. I mean, not four bicyclists in a town that is a bicycle town. I don't own a car. I own a bicycle. Um, it's bizarre. So it's nice because we have that sort of built-in isolation, but it's also extremely weird because, as you'll see in the video, there's nothing. So I'm doing pretty well, I have to say. And there's a few things open on campus. Again, it's going to be in the video that I'm kind of putting together. Um,
The video will be on Tumblr.
yes, I'll post it on Tumblr and I'll share it to It's the Real Us. Um, because Kate asked me about work and what I do, which I haven't really talked about in It's a Real Us, so I'm going to do that today. But I also want to share the video because it just fascinated me. It just absolutely fascinated me. And I've seen a couple of people on campus, like our bookstore is open because it has to be because there's students on campus and there are students who the shipping books to the students since they're in the university is going to take so very long. So bottom line, it's an essential service. The other thing that's open now, and the food is so fucking good, is what's called the dining commons. We have a lot of eating places all around campus, but there are three university dining complexes that are kind of like food courts for the students, for the undergrads, specifically more than anything else for the undergrads who live on campus, which they have to live the first year. And the food is awesome. But now, instead of going in and picking what you want and going to the salad bar, there's people at the stations serving you. And then you eat outside because, of course, you can't eat inside because of the isolation thing. So it's really weird, but it's also wonderful. I mean, I walk around, I get to see the hummingbirds every day, at least one. Um, yeah, I mean, it's very strange, but considering I live with depression, anxiety, and suicide, triple cocktail, I'm very at peace. But also, and my sister and I were talking about this. Last year, I had the concussion, so I was out for 2 weeks with bed rest, and then I had the infection that I had was on bed rest for 3 weeks. So I've just recently been through even worse where I couldn't move. So this is a breath of fresh air. And my sister also last year had a 3 month bed rest because she broke several places of her leg and foot and broke and popped her ankle out in a fall. So she's doing a lot better too, although she's got the kids and her husband. So I don't know how she's dealing with them. But yeah, I'm bottom line, I'm really well, thank you. And I've rented a car a couple of times and I plan to do it the next couple of days and just take a drive because even the cars, the zip cars, which are, the cars that you can rent for a couple of hours or days, um, the fleet is down to half the fleet that was available because nobody's renting them, and they're available all the time because nobody's renting them because you really can't go anywhere. Um, so it's an interesting time, but I'm fine, thank you. By the way, I wanted to explain this. Do you know what this is?
This is
No,
Dr.
no,
Evil.
no, no, not all five, just the three, just the three. So it's. Do you know what this is?
No.
It's a 6 pack of these.
Ah, nice. So this was for today.
Ah.
I love, glad to have you seen all on the chat, and it was a great show. So Fern apparently wants to close this because yes, said everything he wanted to say. So and probably has to go to the bathroom anyway.
All right, so let's get
But
started with
yeah,
the subject.
let's get started with the subject. No, it's I thought about this whole topic, um, and I don't know. I probably have to let me check the chat. Steph's on the chap. She's on the chap. I don't know, but she's on the chat. um, and I saw Alok wrote something that he has a problem. There's a problem. Seems to be a problem with the stream about stream getting slow. Is that is the stream okay? Do you guys see any problems? So if so, let us know. Can be, of course, because it's Saturday night, at least here, and so people go not outside but on the web because they can't, right? Well, here's it's indeed, and I wanted to let me just chime in there and say I wanted to take a couple of photos in the small town that I live and at the time in the town that I work in, and um because I thought, how cool would that be, right? No people around, but I mean, there are fewer people around, but there's still, and that little forest behind the house. And I went for a walk a couple of times, and I've never seen as many people there as in the last, because people go for a walk because that's allowed, right? And they go like in line, like 2 meters, or it's around 6 feet distance, right? And it feels a bit weird, but okay. So there's that. So where's the distance? Difference? When are we allowed, or when are we, or when is someone a professional photographer? What's the deal with that? When can you call yourself a professional photographer? And I thought about that because while working and putting stuff around here, because I have nothing else to do than tidying up, right? Um, there's one episode that came into my mind from years ago when we were on a shooting, and someone approached us and asked us with two friends of mine, and it was a professional shoot, right? So we were, as Jennifer writes on the chat, um, it was a paid shooting. So, and he asked whether we are professionals, and I said define professional, and his definition was that, well, if you can make a living on what you do, then you're a professional. So it's an interesting um, it's an interesting distinction, right? I mean, getting something. Sorry, this is I don't know if you hear that noise. It's my laptop. Should be gone now. Um, so it's an interesting distinction, right? Getting paid or making a living on that, is that the distinction, or when are we allowed to call ourselves professional photographers?
So that's interesting. I think there's a lot more to it, um, because you can get paid for it and maybe just have your camera. Well, I think getting paid for it, but then again, getting paid how? For example, I'm thinking of my former best friend here, who I've always, not always, but who I thought of a professional artist for years before he finally accepted it himself. And he was not only selling some of his stuff, actually, the one here, whoops, the one right behind me there, that one is one of his. And the video that I posted the other day was the one with the birds too. He To me, he was a professional photographer because he put his work out there. I mean, a photographer, professional artist, because he put his work out there, because he sold it, even though he was selling it really cheap to start because it was smaller. And and but he also, which I always thought was really funny, there were a lot of, because he lived at the time, um, in a loft in a warehouse that was used by his former partner to for a clay studio, for ¿cómo se llama esto? For throwing um, this stuff. Actually, this woman was part of the studio, and they have one now. Ceramics, for creating ceramics, but it also had a little gallery where they would have shows for all kinds of artists, not just specifically ceramics. And the artists at the studio loved Tim's work so much that they would trade him, they would barter for his pieces for some of their pieces. And to me, that was just as much of a getting paid for and an even bigger compliment. And he used to complain, oh, I don't have enough stuff to sell because I keep bartering all this stuff with the artists. And I'm like, what the hell? You know, you've got artists clamoring and wanting your work. Right now, at the beginning of your art career, this is awesome. So to me, it's a broader definition of being professional. The
But
other thing, getting
but
to your
that's the
point,
thing about being a professional artist.
professional.
It's a
Yes,
it's a so can we
but
even
and we're artists.
we had this discussion before, and I don't think we ever came to a conclusion about photography as
Nor
art.
will we ever.
Nor will we ever. That's the cool thing about that. So that's why we were able to continue this conversation for like almost 3 years now, or more than 3 years, um, because we always have something to talk about. But it's um, being it's because photography is such a wide field, right? It's when it's there's art photography, but what is art photography? I think we're going to talk about that a bit later. So being a professional, for me, the question is always, right, if you're a professional photographer, like, let's really use it with that definition, you get paid for it, right? You get paid frequently, more or less frequently get paid for it. I mean, you're not a professional carpenter if you make one chair, right, and get paid for that chair. So
Right.
I think it has to be there has to be a certain has to become more or less a frequent thing.
And you market yourself. You know, there's a whole
Yeah, definitely
structure.
the structure, right? If you're a person who markets themselves or is available for paid shootings, you're a professional photographer. Probably or not. I know it's from a videography standpoint, which was I was, and I yeah I can tell this I can tell the story. And I was asked by friends that, well, I know someone who's a filmmaker, blah blah, and he needs someone for his new film, blah blah. Would you be interested? And I said, well, depends on what it is, right? And he kind of made um, made the contact between the two of us, and we talked with each other and kind of found a way to cooperate. Let's put it like that. And it turned out that this guy was just the wor the worst person, not person, but like the worst filmmaker ever. Like, it's like it was just it was absolute disaster, as it turned out. But this guy sees himself as a professional filmmaker. So, because he apparently makes money with his movies, and does that frequently. So he's probably a professional filmmaker, even though his stuff is not something that you would probably so I think, and I don't want to bash him or anything, but I think so the quality side of being, because I always have the feeling that people say, "Oh, he's a professional photographer." Um, that this is also has some feeling of quality, and there's inherent quality, which is not necessarily the case, right? Because I know so many amateur photographers or amateur filmmakers who make amazing stuff and then not make a cent with that, and don't even probably don't many of them don't even want to. So the quality part, so is it really just professional photography, really just getting paid for it and being available for paid work? Is it really just that? Is it that simple? This is an honest question. Is it that simple?
You know, I would still, and I would go back to Jennifer's when you get paid, which for a second there I thought it said when you get laid, but that's a whole other story.
Well, if you get laid and get paid for that, that's not necessarily
That's not a professional
photography.
photographer.
No, I mean you can make photos and probably sell them.
But yeah, I mean the bottom line is because, and you said this at the very beginning, that you know there's such a broad spectrum of what is a photographer, and I go back to the whole artist thing in general. Um, and I look at the guys I work with. There's now three guys who do the graphic design artwork, and they do more caricatures and or they do reproductions of photographs for educational purposes, and of whether of bugs or the inside of muscles or mucus or whatever. And they don't consider themselves artists, and I'm sitting there going, you have got to be kidding me. Look at the work that you do. And they do get paid for it. And I think photography is the same thing. When I look at people like TJ and Daniel, who have both been on our InConversation, um, they don't consider their work, as they both said, creative by doing all these portraits or doing event photography. Yet to me, as someone who has tried it, I get that it is, but for them, it's a conveyor belt, really, of creating this stuff all the time. And you have to meet customer expectations, which gets to the quality part of it. And for a lot of people, the photograph, oh, it goes back to your point that you made a while back, which I absolutely loved. For most people, photography is, it is of this. And for a lot of us who are amateurs or people like me who are, you know, gradually starting to hopefully get themselves out there, and this COVID-19 thing has sort of put a kibosh on it for a while. As artists, um, it's not about the it is of this, but it is about whatever I took a picture of. There's that difference. So it really, and I wanted to say this when you were where it started. When can you call yourself a You can call yourself a professional photographer anytime you want. You can call yourself a metal wire hanger. You can call yourself whatever you want. But I also think for me, the professional photographer is someone like Daniel, who owns a lot of the equipment. Now he's got the drones, he's got the lights, you know, he's got all of that stuff. Or someone like TJ who works with that kind of thing all the time. I don't consider myself a professional photographer in that same vein. I think I'm a professional photographer in the sense that I'm trying to get my stuff out there, but by the same token, um, perfect example, and the expectations thing. I was doing a walk a couple of weeks ago around campus. This guy was in the middle of this open field that we call the quad, that's right in the middle of the university where people hang out, yada yada. And there was nobody there. And he was taking pictures with his phone on a little stand. And this guy would run, set the timer, run, and then jump up, which was really funny. And I
Mhm.
kept walking towards him and thinking, what the fuck? So eventually I happened to have my camera and I took some pictures of him. I didn't really get a good, I mean, I got a good picture, but it wasn't really the celebration he was trying to capture, because he had just passed all of his classes with incredible grades, and it was his next to the last quarter on campus. So, so to me, there's also that. I didn't, when I sent him the pictures, and I told them they don't really, this is, they're good, but they're not, they didn't meet his expectations. So I think that's the other part of being a professional too, being able to work with others and meet that expectation. And you're putting stuff.
Mm.
Yes,
I
yes,
I like this, and I'm coming back to Bud's the
good.
comment. But Alok Sharma wrote on the chat, "Are professionals someone who know how to sell and when to?" So, um, knowing what to sell, to which person, and how to sell it. Yes, I think this is indeed the definition of being professional. And well, I think this is a layered thing, because when we talk about a professional photographer, is it in terms of that's this person's profession, right? So indeed, what Alok wrote, knowing what to sell, and how to sell it and who to sell it to, or and then I think this is another layer of that, and has a bit of a different meaning. Is, oh, this guy's very professional. And I had this, which was my it's my only what's it called, testimony from a model shoot
Yeah,
that I
yeah, yeah,
got
yeah.
on a model website, where I lost my login information, so I have to write them. And she wrote, well, Pete was very professional, which was kind of, so I just mention it because it felt good, right? Because I
Because nobody
really,
else talks good about you. Yes, I
nobody
know.
else in this conversation talks good about me, so I have to brag a bit about my experiences with model photography. Um, so this is a different layer, I think. Acting professional or being a professional, and it doesn't necessarily correlate, right? Because I also don't see myself as a professional photographer, even though I more or less frequently do paid shooting. But this is something maybe comes into play. I don't offer that, right? In terms of someone, all shootings so far, where like people went to me and asked me, well, would you want to shoot that? So maybe one day, but so but let's come, or is something that you wanted to add to that,
Well,
Ron?
no, I think that that point about selling, who to sell to and when and what, I think that's brilliant. And I've talked about this before, but I signed up for, I think early last year, for Jason Matthias, The Art of Selling Art, which is an ongoing online course. And he really, I will say, dedicates himself to teaching, and he's awesome. I have to say, he's more than willing to work with people, and it was a wonderful experience. But here's the story behind his work, and I would highly recommend, and I'll share the link. Um, anyway, he has a degree in business, and he was going into that business world, but eventually got nowhere. He had been doing photography on the side and decided to just, this is what he loved, and screw it, this is what he's going to do. And he was featured, and this is how I discovered him, and this is how he started teaching on F Stoppers. There was an article, this is a photographer who sells himself as an artist, and he makes 60 plus thousand a year. And the huge point of this is I mean, he does the art shows, he people, and he does these gorgeous landscapes. And I've talked about this before. And one of the pivotal lesson for me was when he was talking about, look at what the galleries, the expensive art galleries in the higher income areas where you live, close to you. Look at what they're selling and see how you can reach out to people. And when I was looking at the stuff that they're selling, my work doesn't fit. We have galleries here, there's galleries in all over the place. My work usually doesn't fit because it's usually the kind of photography that it's the gorgeous landscapes and the gorgeous stuff that people recognize. And my stuff is art in the sense that I take it and mess with it, for the lack of a better term. So that's what I am learning, and this is why I do consider myself a professional artist, because I am navigating that, and trying to find where I fit so I can then hopefully blossom and get my work out. So I totally agree with that, and that's a big part of it, which is something else I've talked about here before. Being a professional photographer, and I think a lot of us approach this way, and when we start exploring it, it's a rude awakening. Is not taking pictures every day all the time. It's taking pictures every so often when you make an appointment, and all of the other stuff that you have to do, including the knowing when to sell, how to sell, doing the research, doing the paperwork, going out and meeting people, and on and on and on. Well, this way. Again, it's a
But
broad. It's the
that's part of that's a large part of the trade, but that doesn't necessarily make you a professional, right? It's a bit like saying, changing your tires makes you a driver, which is not
yes,
necessarily the case, right?
no,
It's
but
but
it is a part
it's
of
part of
driving.
it. It's a part of driving. Yeah, definitely.
And it is a part of driving. If you, even if you don't want to do, like in my case, I don't will not do events. I will not do portraiture. That guy that I took the pictures of doing the jumping in the middle of the quad, horrible. I mean, they were nice, but they weren't what he wanted. And I don't want to put myself in that situation of, oh, this is what you wanted, but I couldn't deliver. And it was really stupid too, because it was just a matter of just the aperture setting. If I changed the aperture setting from 1.8 to like 6, I would have had a broader depth of field, and I would have caught him. But you know, Sony's iFocus and autofocus is wonderful, but every once in a while it's going to mess up, and it messed up on the best shots, um, or the smiling shots, not the best shots, the smiling shots, which is what he wanted. But I don't want to put myself in that situation. I enjoy what I'm doing. So again, I think the whole professional and amateur photographer thing depends on where you put yourself and where you feel comfortable.
Mm,
And you're always going to get pushback. It's like calling yourself an artist. You can call yourself an artist, and Jason has discussed this and someone emailed him and said, "How dare you call yourself an artist?" Blah blah blah. And it's like, you know what? You can call me whatever you want. This is how I see myself. Bye.
right.
And I think that's the other part of this discussion too, perhaps, is not just what we call ourselves, but then how comfortable are we in embodying that
I,
persona, if you will, and then going
mm,
out there and having people, a lot of times even anonymously, and not. I had a couple of close friends who I've actually just don't want to have anything to do with anymore, who were brutal when I was talking to them about what I was doing with my photography, and who really just, I mean, I wasn't expecting to them hold me and say, "Oh, you're wonderful," but it was just an attack because of their own experience with art and so on, and the other one with photography, not knowing, never even asking. I mean, it was just so it that's the other part of this too. There's a lot of um, personal opinion and personal history at stake too when you discuss and you put yourself out there. So that's the
yeah,
other thing too. I mean, it's complicated.
definitely. I mean, this is the thing. That's why I usually don't. wh- I usually don't talk with people that I meet or that I don't know, or I wouldn't, or let's put it differently, that I wouldn't consider to be close personal friends, about my passions, which is like photography. One of my two passions, and the other one, as you probably know, is the whole storytelling thing, right? So, but because the first thing these people ask is, or two things, right? Either they ask you whether you're professional, whether you're selling that, whether you make a living on that, whether you make money with that. And when I say yes, sometimes, then they're kind of, yeah, then it's nodding and cool. And during a time when I wasn't, when I just, no, it's just a hobby. Okay, just a hobby. When you're, it seems, and it's really when I had a couple of very interesting conversations about photography with people, but that all started with when people see you as a professional, um, and not as just a hobbyist, which is very, very interesting because it's automatically there's the automatic assumption that if you do something as just a hobby, that you don't really know what you're doing, which is really, really interesting. And but let me just before we forget it or before it scrolls up, go back to Bud's comment about his wife, who's an artist, and decided she doesn't want to sell her work except in very limited circumstances. And I think this is. I mean, I totally feel that. I wouldn't want to sell my stuff or not everything, right? So if someone, which happened, right, that people ask me like, "Oh, I want to have that photo," and depending on who it is, then, yeah, okay, you can have it, right? So people ask me for prints, and I say, okay, email me, then you can make your own print of that photo. And then, but so this and another thing that Bud wrote is we have friends who make their living as artists, which is very hard work. I know definitely. I know a lot of my friends are artists, and it's probably the hardest because of what Fern said, right? You have to making art or what your thing, right? Whatever it is just a tiny little fraction of that whole complex. If you're a photographer, for example, I know a couple of my friends are full-time, real professional photographers who make a living on that, and it's like 90% or 80% of the time is like advertising, networking, and just a fraction of that is the actual part of photography. So, more from Bod. Producing what people want is very stressful. As an artist trying to be a professional, you produce what you want and hope it sells, or do you produce what you think people want and get stressed and hungry when it doesn't? Yes, totally. That's I think that is always the big question in that, and it's also it's a big frustration from all my photographer friends, professional photographer friends, full-time professional photographer friends that I know who are get extremely frustrated by 90% what they say 90% of the time when I photograph, I do passport pictures. And I know one who said, I send people away if they want passport pictures. Yes, I won't make a buck with those people, but I can't do this anymore. So this is really a thing. What do you do what people want, or do you do what you want and then hope that it will sell?
So two things. I just sent you the jasonmatias.com link
Ah,
in our chat, not in because I know in YouTube it's not going to show up as a link, so you can post it as a
and
link.
let me put it
Uh,
in the chat.
if
Kimberly,
if you go, that's his site. If you go to his site on the top, there's a banner that says the art of selling art. Not
can you
selling
repeat
anybody
that?
on this,
Can you
but
can you
interesting.
can
He
you
does
can
offer
you
some stuff
can
for
you
free.
repeat that because your sound broke?
Oh, okay. So
The
so
banner
on the
said
top of the website, there's a banner that
mhm.
says, if you're looking for the art of selling art, click here. I'm not trying to sell it. He also offers, like a lot of these folks do, God bless them, uh, free stuff as well. There's his TED talk that he did locally in, I want to say, Seattle, which is where I think he lives. Uh, some really good insight. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the passport photos. Um, it also depends. I mean, you have a photographer, granted, it's Peter Hurley, who is a well-known portrait photographer who has done buttloads of videos for B&H and Photo Stoppers. And he just, as far as I know, all he does is portraiture. And it's usually, at the most, quarter shot or closer, close up shots. And I've talked about this before with the same setup. He doesn't use a circular light. Usually he uses a three light setup that creates a certain kind of shadowing that's absolutely amazing. And he's also the one who talked about and made popular, I think, the whole idea of when you're taking a picture, have someone just lean over a little, like in a little like this, so that you can define the jaw better. Um, and the guy loves doing this, and he used to be a model, and he's been doing this for, I want to say, maybe 15 years or more, and that's what he does. So again, even as a photographer and as an artist, and I consider the guy an artist. And who's the guy that we've talked about before who also does portraits, who did the portrait of Obama and Gaddafi? Um, Usually black and white portraits. He's been featured in a couple of places. Amazing photographer. He loves doing, again, that. I mean, he does other stuff every once in a while, but so there. How do we?
Yeah, but doing portraiture is a very different thing than doing passport shots. Because doing passport is just fill in the gaps, right? It's paint by numbers. Has nothing to do. I mean, I think what maybe I worded that wrong, but these people were literally talking about passport photo. I
Right.
need a photo for my passport. That's why I go to a photographer, and that's what frustrated them. I think that at least I know from one of these friends, she specializes in portraiture. So that's what she does. That's what she loves doing. But
Yeah, I
biometric
can. Yeah, I see
passport
what you're saying.
photos, that's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, and
Um,
that and there, I mean, you can meet the person and say hello and blah 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 and stand there, look at this. It's like the driver's license pictures, It's
right.
like take a look here, here, and
Yeah.
there's not. That's true. There isn't room, but I can also see some people really enjoying that.
Yeah, I
And I
don't
don't
see
know
no,
any.
don't get
I
me wrong. I don't say that this is not professional photography or this
Right.
is
Oh
not
no. Yeah.
photography. It is probably not art, but if you enjoy doing it, why not? There are people enjoying digging holes just for whatever, right? It's nothing. There's nothing to say that. And I was just the point that I was trying to make is that uh, um, based on Bart's comment, that do you do what people want you to do and get paid for it, or do you do what you want to do and hope that someone will pay you for it?
So
And
so
so this is the thing, and many of them, or two of them that I know, they're really frustrated by the fact that most of what they do is to do these paint by numbers things, that right, because that pays the bills, right?
right.
And one of my friends said, no, I will never ever do that again. I'll send people away, right?
Oh, totally.
Because it's frustrating for me, for her
Yeah.
in that case, right? I wouldn't do that either. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
he tells me, right? Can you make once? I did that too, right? Back in the days when it wasn't necessary to do biometric shots, right? But now I wouldn't even want to do that. If people ask me, then no, no, you can go to someone else, please. That's a good thing if you don't have to rely on that, right? I can choose whatever I want to do.
Yeah, no, totally. And this is like, I want to say 4 years ago when I started to take my photography seriously. And I still had my D50. I mean, I had a friend, can you photograph our wedding? And I'm like, no. I had tried it once I've talked about this before, with my sisters, with my niece's quinceañera in Crowley, Louisiana, Cuban quinceañera, yes, in Crowley, Louisiana, which is a small town of like 15,000. And I freaked. I mean, I still was shooting what I wanted, but I was watching the professional photographer, and I was sitting there going, there is no way. And my sister even said, your photos are really good. I would have hired you. And it's like, thank you, but no,
Mm,
no, because I enjoyed what I was doing. I wasn't
mm.
under the pressure of taking, You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally mean know what you mean. The thing is, and I think this is especially wedding photography. This is one of these extremes, right? When you have when it's really super important. This is where both of these layers get mixed, right? Being a professional photographer, as in I go there and I advertise myself as being that guy, and you pay me for what I do, right? And being professional, as in terms of you better deliver. There's no excuse. Like a wedding, there's no freaking excuse that you cannot deliver the shots. And I photographed a couple of weddings, and it was because it's a fun thing. I enjoyed each and every of these weddings that I took photos at, or of in that case um even though it was freaking exhausting. It was one of the most exhausting things that I did in my life, because when you really do that, like from 9 a.m. in the morning until 2 a.m. In at night, um huge fun, very exhausting. But this was the thing, right? That I said, okay, listen, guys, I'm not a professional wedding photographer. I think my photos are good, or well, you think so too, or else you wouldn't have asked me, right? So you think I can do that, but I can give you no guarantee whatsoever. I only have two cameras available, right? I cannot guarantee that you will get even just one photo. I'm pretty sure there will be, like about
One.
this. I mentioned it, said there will be one. I'm pretty sure I'll take it with my phone and I'll email it at once. No, I said I'm pretty sure that there will, but I don't have I don't even have the resources, right? To guarantee. And this is kind of interesting because when we go this goes back to the last conversation. I think the last conversation that we had when we talked about cameras, when I did research for my camera that I bought in December, when people freaked out, literally I saw people freaking out about the fact that this camera, which is sort of a hybrid between an amateur camera, I'm talking about the EOS 90D, Canon EOS 90D, which is a bit of a hybrid between an amateur camera. It's not really a professional camera, but it's not an amateur camera anymore. It's Canon's semi-pro line prosumer camera. And people freaked out and said, I would never use that camera for professional shooting because it only has one memory card slot. It has no dual card shooting. And I said, I didn't. I sat there and I thought, oh damn, right. Because I had memory cards failing, not often, but it happens. Memory cards sooner or later will fail. And if you have that kiss at the altar, right? Or that the ring, right? If you have that shot and the card fails, you're fucked. I'm sorry. Shouldn't have said that. But you're absolutely screwed. And this is like I did in yeah with the weddings that I shot. It was talking with the priest, where can I go in the church, right? From where, which angle, where do I least get in the way, so I, because you don't want to, this is a ceremony, right? It's not staged for you, but you need to have, so you find that angle where you can get that shot, and you're focused. Like, just imagine that you're like thrilled to get that shot from that angle of the kiss, and then the card fails or the camera fails with card. You're done, right? You cannot, usually cannot restage that. So
Well, but
this is the thing. This is the thing why I would never ever in my life would I say I will offer that. And this is the first thing that I told people. Hey, I cannot guarantee you anything. I'm pretty sure there will be 50 to 100 photos, whatever, that are usable, right? Maybe are just 20, maybe there are five, maybe there's not one, because if my camera breaks, then my camera is broken. I only have that one camera, and I cannot afford to have a second camera. And I will certainly not, not, well, of course, we can rent something, but this is the thing, right? I have the freedom to say that. You don't have the freedom as a professional photographer. if you offer that. And so this is maybe it's being a coward. I don't know,
Yeah.
but you have to get sure to be able to deliver. And there's no matter. I mean, it's with every job, right? You have if this is your job, you have to deliver. And yes, there are reasons why you can't do your job, like a pandemic, right? um, but it can be it always can only be an explanation that some people might accept or not, but it can never be an excuse. And this is also part of being a professional photographer, to get sure that you can deliver and that you can get that you can deliver these shots. And if you I'm almost done. And I read some cool stories, I mean, certainly online. Well, not certainly. I know they're online. I don't have any links, but about should be easy to find via Google. Like people suing photographers because they failed to give them their wedding shots, and there are horror stories out there. So no way ever would I do that.
So I want to go back to what you said about being a coward. And it's funny because I'm going to get all zen here. I'm going to get all deep and spiritual. So sorry. But I was just listening again to Pema Chodron talking about boundaries and the importance of those. And oh my God, that is such a cliche. That is such a
No.
cliche.
Did you ever do that while meditating? I never
I,
did.
sometimes it just happens naturally because I'm sitting there with my hands up like this, and they're resting on
Mhm.
something and they'll touch. But it's not really. I mean, it's the idea of closing the circle. So it's more of something you do just as a concept. I'm not criticizing it, but it is a
I
cliche.
know.
Um,
Totally cliche.
it's not essential. Let's put it that way. But
There's no way to do it right. It has to
right.
feel right for you. There's no way how to
Yes.
do it. That's just bullshit.
Yes.
Everyone who wants to sell you that you have to do it this way has no
Just
clue. Just like with
just like
photography.
photography.
So
So the thing is, and again, I'm going to use myself as an example here. I don't give a tiny rat's ass what anybody thinks of me. Granted, I'm also old, and I just generally don't give a tiny rat's ass. But I've learned to get there about who I consider myself and how I consider myself and what kind of photographer I consider myself to be. Um, but it takes a while. It takes getting comfortable. It takes exploring. It takes doing like what I did the other day with that guy doing the jump, or with my niece and going to the quinceañera, or whatever. And I know that I can sometimes, like you said, get a good shot in all of these circumstances, but I know what I'm comfortable with, and I know what I enjoy, and I know what I love. And like you said, these are my boundaries. This is what I'm comfortable with, and this is what I can sell you or give you or whatever. And I don't think that's being cowardly. I think that's just setting up good communication. So when
right.
you come to me, which goes back to Jason. I mean, Jason, one of the great lessons was finding your voice, and he's not the only one. David Duchemin, who I also
But
took a course with,
Jason who? I'm sorry.
who?
Jason Jason
Jason
who?
Matias, the guy
Ah,
I
okay.
the
I
guy I
got you.
recommended.
Sorry.
You know, one of the finding your voice, finding who you are, and through going through all of those, not all of them, but a lot of those lessons with him, I eventually realized my shit. Lake Tahoe is really close from here. Several galleries, and a lot of galleries don't sell photography, but the galleries that do sell photography, and I've said this before, what do they sell pictures of in Tahoe? They sell pictures of Tahoe. They sell pictures of the California mountains. And I'm sitting there going, really? So again, and on and on. So it's a matter of finding where you fit. Now, to Bud's issue, a point about creating what you like as opposed to creating what people expect, and you talked about this too. I want to leave photography and go back to my former best friend. When he started, and he had a couple of shows, including a one. artist show in a small venue, his stuff sold out. The first couple of times, his stuff sold out. I mean, there was still some of it left, but I remember the one show specifically in a small coffee shop gallery in right across the street from the Golden Gate Park, where half of his stuff was sold the day of the opening, that evening of the opening show. Um, I mean, his stuff was really popular. However, he eventually did a series like a year or like 2 years after he started venturing out on the professional, art show and stuff, and it tanked. I love these. It was these little birds with like little children in 1800s little kids wear with the sailor outfits and the pretty little frilly dresses and stuff. They were little kids standing there, but with bird heads. People just couldn't handle them for whatever reason. I thought they were absolutely brilliant, and it's the one collection of his stuff from back then that I for whatever reason don't have anything from. Didn't sell. I think he might have sold one or two. But you know what? He accepted it. He went back. He actually painted over them and gessoed over them and created new stuff that he liked to do, and eventually kept exploring new things and went in a totally different direction. And he still, as far as I know, because we don't talk anymore, and haven't for like 10 years, is doing what he likes, his brother tells me. I mean, because I check in with, I know his brother too. Um, and so to me, that's actually, he is my my model. He's in a way still my hero for the art thing of it, of doing what you want to do and finding ways to expose yourself, to expose your work. Doing the art shows. I have this thing coming up in October where they're going to be featuring my photography. I talked about it in a literary magazine and that sort of thing, and reaching out and eventually making it. Because that's the other thing I think that we have to come to terms with when we do professional photography, or however we're going to do the photography, when we go outside and reveal and share our work. What are our expectations? Do we expect to, as I used to think when I was much younger, be able to just take a couple of pictures in black and white and, hey, I'm I don't know. Annie Leibovitz. And all of a sudden, I took a couple of portraits. I'm Annie Leibovitz, or I'm Francesco Scavullo, and my photography is gonna be in Vogue, and I'm gonna be a top photographer because I have a nice camera and I can take these pictures. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes luck, it takes timing. There's all of these things again, that it's not just doing this, and so it's complicated. But I think in any, whether you're writing, doing film, whether you're doing ceramics, whether you're doing painting, or whether you're doing photography, there's such a broad spectrum that
Mm. But I think there's also, because you mentioned that some minutes ago, in worded differently, but I think what is the one of the most important things about being a professional photographer is to know two things: to know what I can do, and even more importantly, what I cannot do. And I think the worst thing you can do, and that plays into the whole you have to deliver part, is if you're not sure if you can do something, then you have to communicate that, and it has to be absolutely clear. And there's to the client, to the person who's about to pay you for it, right? And if they're not okay with that, if they're not okay to then don't do it. And this is also a thing. If you can't deliver for whatever reason, this will totally hurt your reputation. Um, and there's no excuse that you have that will reinstate your reputation, usually, right? So this is the thing, turning a job down if you're not sure that if you can deliver or not is probably one of the most important pieces of advice that I ever got. So, what are you doing? Are you hammering?
Oh no, that's. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you know that. Sorry, I should have silenced my muted. Yeah, I have a live action keyboard that is a real keyboard, so it clicks.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's
no,
happened
no,
before.
no problem. Um, so knowing what, and this is, maybe it's my, because I'm a really, how can I put that? Very, very, if it comes to, I think let's make the bridge to art now. No, let me say one thing about amateur photography before that. But I'm very conservative if it comes to art, as in terms of, because my art teachers were like really, I was brought up in art as you have to learn the tools, right? And you have to learn them not because that is how it is done and that is how to do it, but simply for the fact that only if you really know your tools and how to use the tools, you can do what you want to do. And this was one of the most important lessons that I ever got. Like, yeah, stop thinking about art, learn how to do it, and then you can do what you want. That's why you need to learn that, not because this is how to do it or this is what people expect, but you want to do something. And to be able to do something, you have to learn how to do it. And that's why you need to learn the tools. So, but there's the one thing that about amateur photography, and I think people who call themselves amateur photography, amateur photographers, are doing themselves a big disservice in terms of, not necessarily in terms of how other people perceive them, but in terms of how they perceive themselves. Because if I go out and say I'm an amateur photographer, what I do is that, and this is, I don't, I have to say this. This is not a claim that I make. This is a thought experiment, right? So please, correct me if you think that I'm wrong. But I think this just came to my mind. I think this is doing yourself a big disservice because you automatically apologize for your art. You say, don't take this seriously. Don't judge this as if was made by someone who would get paid for it. So why do that? Why telling people, like, I see that all of the time, like on all sorts of platforms, amateur photographer. Why do people do that? I mean, I see that there are photos on that blog or Instagram or whatever. I see their photos. Why do people tell me that they're amateur photographers? Do they tell me that they're amateur photographers, so that if I see something in a photo that I don't like or that I think, or someone else, I, not as in me, but as the viewer, right, that this is not professional, that there's an excuse for that, because or is it that they say, hey, I'm just an amateur photographer, but look at my amazing photos.
Yeah. And
So
and 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 it,
so
so
what
here's
is
the
it?
thing.
And I,
But
sorry, let me
go ahead.
last one last sentence. This was one of the first experiences I made like 10 years ago or something, when I started to put my photos on the web, back then on Flickr. And there was this, I think it was a guy that who's Flickr feed I subscribe to, and it made amazing photos, amazing, impressive photos. And I commented on a couple of them, and there was always that every time that reply to, "Oh no, but I'm just an amateur photographer," and I stopped commenting because why the frick do you tell me that? I like what you show me. Why do you tell me that you're just an amateur photographer?
Well, but I think it goes back to and it ties nicely in with Jennifer's point about the equipment and not considering
I
herself a
have to.
professional
I'll put
photographer.
that. Give me a moment. I'll put it on the screen. No, 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 no.
Um, so
So
so I think again it depends. It's like, and it goes also, it ties into what you said at the very beginning. Do you call yourself a professional photographer? Look, you can call yourself Peter Pan, or whatever, but the bottom line is, it depends on how you use it. It depends on you. As a matter of fact, said something a while back that I was going to address about just that you're just blah 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 blah. And I think that that's fine, but I don't, how can I put this? I don't think in the end, because it depends on how what we read into it. It depends on how we use the term. Like you said, that photographer said to you every time, "I'm just an amateur photographer." Um, but really, there's nothing wrong with that. There are some people who want to be amateur photographers who don't. And in a way, I don't consider myself a professional photographer in the sense that of all of the stuff we talked about that can imply. I'm more of an artist slash amateur photographer. I'm not equipment savvy. I really only have my camera. That's my equipment. Well, I have a tripod, which I barely ever use. Um, but I'm still also an artist. And so I don't have an issue with what we call ourselves, because look, it's the same thing as when some people say, "Oh, I shoot only film. I'm a film photographer," or "I'm someone who never edits," or "I'm someone who uses only digital," or you can use that just to highlight what you're or explain what you're doing or how you see yourself, but also you can use that as a defense. My pictures are awesome because I shoot this camera or that camera or whatever.
yeah, but
I
see
don't care.
that's the thing. I mean, let's be for a moment very very serious here. Your photos suck because you shoot Sony, and mine are good because I shoot Canon. It's a fact, right? It's it's a fact, and
and the one you have and the one
why?
you have back there, which I can see, of the skull, that was actually shot with my baby, my D50, which was a used camera from 2000. I want to say 2002, 2000, no, 2008 or something like that. It would now be 12 years old with a kit lens. And but that's the point. I think in the end, you can call yourself whatever you want.
Right,
You can use whatever equipment you want. For me personally, and to Alok's term about the point about, excuse me, or Amy's point actually about the photographer who uses or who's had shows who uses iPhones. Lovely. I don't have any issue with house, and then the arguments that are put on and the terms and all that stuff, that's fine. But I also think, in a way, it's good to be able to at least have this kind of discussion where we can understand the complexities of this stuff. Because, excuse me, I amateur can be, yes,
perfect.
that's it,
Love that.
exactly,
James
yeah.
writes,
So
amateur can be a positive, not doing for financial gain, but because you love it. And this is I love that. Totally love that.
yeah, thank you for putting it but again, however you describe yourself, whether amateur, photographer, artist, whatever, that's up to you, and then how it unfolds and how it fits with the broader. And I will say this: there's also, uh, and I'm a big believer in this. Look, we use certain terminology to describe. This is glasses. This
No.
is headphones. There's all kinds of terminology to describe stuff that we understand in a common way. It gets complicated because with photography, with any art form, because we're talking about art, which is very subjective. But the bottom line is usually when someone says, I'm a professional photographer, certain things come to mind, and that's okay. When somebody says you're an amateur, this certain things like what James said, or what the point that you made, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum, that an amateur is someone who's just defending themselves. So they're there's certain terminology that comes to us, and that's how we communicate. And I think we need to look at that, but we also need to look at the possibilities of the fact that there's broader spectrums within all of this that we're never going to pin down. We're never, even defining art, which has been a discussion we've had every once in a while. We are never going to be able to agree on what art is, but we have ways of talking about it and learning. And that's one of the things, too, by the way, that to me, makes me think of myself as a photographer, if not exactly a professional or an event photographer, whatever. I am constantly learning. I am constantly sharing what I learn. I'm constantly sharing others' work. I'm involved in a photography community, in a couple of different ones, actually. I'm always talking to other photographers. So you know what I mean? But again,
Mm,
that's my definition. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to just.
No, that's
Yeah.
I do like that. There's still the question left open, right? Where's what is an artist? And I've been here's the thing. We had this. I think we had this discussion. We talked about artists and what is an artist and what is art. Here and there, that shows up in the in the conversations, right? And so I actually sat down to write um, a, a a piece because I wanted to make a video about that, about my the way I see that, right? And I think I wrote 5 pages, and then I realized that I left out one very super important factor, and I had to start all over again. And so I kind of have to maybe the lockdown is a good time. Well, I still go to work, so not much lockdown for me, but maybe that time here now is a good time to finally finish that. What's that? Veggie pops. Who is veggie? Super snacks. Veggie pop.
It's these vegan snacks. It's dry fruit. They are
This
delicious.
is
They're
not a
hard to
sponsored
find.
video, by the way.
No,
Not a
it
sponsored
is
video.
so good.
Fern
Yeah, no, I mean,
buys his underwear himself. He doesn't get sponsored. We frequently see your underwear in these videos.
stay out of my underwear.
You frequently
No,
show your
no, you.
underwear in these videos.
No, these are my jammy
See?
pants. This isn't underwear.
Okay, today jammy pants, not
Anyway,
this.
um, yeah, the bottom line is, and I think without getting too zen about it again, that's what we try to do. We try to, and in these discussions, and in life, we try to make sense of stuff depending on where we are and what we know. And you can shut yourself off and be like, I use the Canon.
Right. I
Go
don't
ahead,
care.
go ahead.
You know that. And I hope everyone knows that I don't give a what did you say before? A
Tiny rat's ass.
tiny rat's ass about which camera. couldn't care less.
Well,
Um,
yes and
but
no. Yes and no.
I couldn't care
You know
less.
what? Well, no,
If a
no, no.
photo
Here's
is
the thing.
good, it's a good photo. I don't care if it's shot on Sony, on Canon. I don't care if it is shot on your Hoover. I don't care if it's shot on film or on digital or with a whatever. It's if a good photo is a good photo.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. And if those people who do it right, put it out there. I only shoot film. I don't edit. I shoot Canon. I shoot Sony. I shoot Fuji, whatever. If that is what you want to tell me, if this is your story, if this is the message that you want to convey, not convey, communicate, if
Yeah.
this is what you want to tell me, that you're shooting Olympus or shooting only Agfa or Fuji film, or that you're shooting only then I don't give a flying fuck, because I'm only interested in your photos. I'm not interested in you. I'm interested in you if I like you as a person, but if your photos suck, then they suck if they shot on Sony, on Olympus, or Canon. If your photos are great, then your photos, it also doesn't matter where how they are shot. If your method of shooting is other than everyone else's method of shooting, if your way of approaching photography is different, or if you have a specific, then this is interesting, but I don't care what you're shooting on. So tell me about how you shoot and not what you shoot with. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. And this is what Bud wrote. Nobody asked Gordon Ramsay what kind of stove he used. Well, if it's a specific stove that can do only this, then yes, I'm interested. But it's of no interest whatsoever. And if this is a color in your photo that only can be produced with the color science of Canon, then tell me that. So,
Yeah.
Amy, right? Come on now, a Hoover taking a photo is pretty impressive. I give you that, Amy, right?
Who's
But
what?
a Hoover taking a photo is pretty impressive. She's right in that. But this is
Yeah.
I,
So,
for me. So let me finish that. For me, talking about all of the time, or talking about I only shoot digital, I only shoot analog, is taking away the focus from the photos to the it's putting the focus on the photographer. And I usually don't give a flying
tiny
about
rat's ass.
photographer, tiny rat says, about the photographer, until I know that person and I'm friends with that person. Then I'm interested. Hey, how do you shoot? What do you do? But this doesn't change anything about the photos, and I'm primarily interested in the photos. And
Yes.
usually these people, unless of course they go for a specific effect, right? Certain things can only be done this way or that way. So if then yeah, but then tell me about that specific effect, and not this is. But here we are at that point. What you said, Fern, right? We're we are trying. Life is about trying to figure things out, and I found that many of these people, they just there's they don't move. It doesn't matter what happens around them. They say I only this is what I do, and I do it no matter what. Just as if that is what makes their photos more special, which it doesn't. It only makes them more special, but I don't care.
Well, it makes them more special to themselves, which is fine. I totally get it. I mean, it's not how I choose, because I've been there. So it's not how I choose to do it anymore. But I want to go back to what you were saying about the cameras. Excuse me, because it was interesting to me because I'm not a gearhead, but it's also really interesting, and maybe because I had the D50, which I started with, which was an old used camera, and because I've shot film twice in my life, once like 20 years ago and the other one like 35 years ago. Yes, I'm that old. Uh, that I am curious about the differences in cameras. I've shot the D50, the D5500,
Yeah, right.
the
Sorry to
D100.
interrupt, but that is
Yeah,
the
but
difference in camera is in the difference in cameras is interesting because it
it's
changes
interesting.
photos. Yeah, it changes my approach and it changes the photos. But then we have different photos. Or to say, hey, this camera is very different than that camera, but I can still take the same type of photos that look
Yes.
very interesting. But that's the process and not the camera.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good way to put it because I, for example, my conversations with Daniel a couple of times, he uses the D5, the Canon D5, and looking at its the quality of his pictures, getting the feel for it. And it's a fascinating conversation. Or with when I was able to use the D850 or the D800 that TJ uses in the studio, which was that used to only now uses in the studio. It used to be his camera, but now he also owns the Sony. He also uses a Sony A7R III for event stuff over from the last like year. But to have those conversations, to get that feel, to have somebody else look at my camera and say blah blah blah, that's an but it's what you said too. That's part of the it's understanding their process, part of seeing. I was absolutely amazed when by the way, we're at an hour and 26 minutes. I think it's time to end soon. um when Daniel took a couple of portraits of me, and we were looking at them in Photoshop, and he zoomed in at 200%, and they were just as sharp as my camera. Which, I mean, I wasn't too surprised, but I was also kind of surprised because, oh, Sony is so sharp and the lenses. Uh, and then also the fact, and I think I've said this before, that I've retaken some pictures with my Sony that I took with my 6 megapixel kit lens D50 7 8
Hmm.
years ago, and those pictures are prettier to me, even though they're not as sharp.
Mhm.
There's some quality about that lack of sharpness in certain situations, like for plants, especially for flowers, that is absolutely just mind blowing. So you it just really, and it's also, I mean, it's also a matter of taste. I mean, there's
Yeah,
so much
it
that
it
plays into
it's
this.
it's definitely a matter of taste in so many instances. But since you mentioned the kit lens, this is actually the reason because I'm not a gearhead. I'm not really a technical person. Actually, I'm pretty stupid if it comes to all the technical stuff. Because I'm not really. No, no. Let me finish this. It will make sense because it's not something that I really enjoy. So I hate working on my literally on my computer, like putting stuff in there, hard drives, building. I hate to do that, and I just do it, or did that, have been doing that because it's easier and I don't have to bring the computer away to. So that's why I taught myself how to do that simple stuff. And the one reason why I started to learn about the technical side of photography, because let's face it, you don't have to. The cameras have become incredibly good. You can take amazing shots at, like, I wouldn't use full auto mode because full auto mode sucks big time. It is actually the hardest way to take great photos. Um, that's my I really do believe that. But like if you use stuff like program automatic or aperture priority mode, all of that will give you amazing photos. So you don't have to know anything about photography. You just have to know how to use these modes. So, but the one reason why I started to learn about the technical side of photography, and which was and I was actually surprised how simple that all is. And I never and it's fascinating how simple that is. If someone can explain this to you in a simple way, because it's simple. And so I'm always surprised why some people think they're something special because they know how photography works. I shoot full manual because I'm a photographer, which is just it's actually full manual photography is the simplest way to get your photos, the photos that you want. It's not the fastest way, but it's the easiest way. But whatever. So the reason why I started to dive into that was because I saw amazing photos made with the same camera that I had back then and with the friggin' kit lens. And my photos didn't even remotely look as good as those photos from a sheer technical side. They weren't as sharp. They weren't, and and the first thing I thought, okay, were kind of photoshopped or whatever, but these were like out of camera shots. There was a friend of mine who had a very similar camera that or even the exact same camera, I think. So, and I talked with him, and he said, no, it's just my camera and the kit lens. And so I thought there has to be a secret, and the secret is simply knowing three things or four, and that's it. So there there's nothing to it, and it's just I don't know why people make such a mystery of their craft, not their art. Probably can't explain art. You probably can't even learn art or teach art. You have to grow to become an artist. You can learn, you can teach people or can show people how to look at things and how to see things and recognize things. That's what you can teach, and that's what you can learn. But you can't learn to become an artist, or you can't teach someone to become an artist. You can only grow to become an artist. And whether you're an artist or not, that is also always a matter of whether people accept you as an artist or not, right?
So I'm going to address that because I still remember this. Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, which is one of my favorite books. And in that book, oh yeah, he talks about, he says, you can teach someone who's a bad writer to be a better writer. You can teach someone who's a pretty good writer to be a better writer or a good writer, and so on. Uh, so you can improve on what you have, but you are I think you are excuse me, you are correct, because in the end it also, and it kind of goes back to the very beginning, and I think we're at over an hour and a half. I think it goes back to the very okay. I think it goes back to the very beginning about about setting the boundaries, and or not the very beginning, but close to it, setting the boundaries and understanding where you are, being able to explore outside your comfort zone, and so on. For example, I know that I'm not a creative photographer. I'm more of this is what I see and how I see it, and this is what the camera also sees.
Right.
So
Same.
I think of myself as seeing what my learning to see how my camera sees, not how I see, but how my camera sees, and 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 then having that conversation with the photos when I'm in Photoshop, and we
Mm.
discuss the photos, and I discuss how they best look,
Yeah.
and how what to just dump because it's crap.
But I think
But
this is, let me just one sentence. I think this, for me, I don't say that this is the way to do it or how to do it, but I think this is um, a, a wonderful, a beautiful, a super creative way. And for me, this is also my approach, right? I look at the photo and I try to get the best out of the photo. The photo tells me what to do. Not I don't tell the photo. Sometimes I don't do anything. Sometimes I sit there for an hour. Sorry to interrupt you. Have
yeah, no, no,
interrupted.
no, totally. But I think that's also, which goes back to the Stephen King thing, and just the idea in general of, this is who I am. I don't do event photography. Yes, could I take a couple of nice pictures at an event? Certainly. Could I do maybe some nice pictures, street photography? I have, and certainly I'll do them again. But the bottom line is knowing what my strengths are and accepting that and building on them and experimenting. For me, again, it's a comfort zone thing. You know, for somebody, maybe I don't want to point out Peter Hurley again, but let's say somebody like Peter Hurley, who probably takes other pictures, but he only promotes, from what I've seen, his very specific, layout of the specific portraiture, which are genius. Um, so you learn and you dig, and sometimes you get inspiration again, like from my former best friend, and the artwork I've got, which is the birds on the spreadsheet, and the cage, and blah blah blah. But the bottom line is that sort of expands my thinking and maybe influences how I take a picture of a building with very structured black and white and very sharp, and you know but it's that building upon that fluidity and getting comfortable and bottom what you do, so yeah,
Mm.
I mean, I honestly don't know how to wrap it up, because I don't know if there is a way to wrap it up, except y'all do whatever you want to do, and keep learning. If you want to, you don't want to learn, that's fine too.
Right. No, but I think this is also like this is the difference. I mean, if there'd be one way, then we'd only need one photographer, right? And then all photos would look the same. So
Me because
that
I own a
alone,
Sony.
that
You, not
alone,
you, because you own a Canon.
right? But that alone rules out people saying this is how you have to do it. The how you have to do it is can only have two reasons, two legit reasons. Number one is I want something very special from you as a person who can hopefully deliver this to me, and so you have to do it this way. This is like a job, right? If you shoot for a newspaper or whatever, magazine, book, whatever, right? Or web page or whatever, then they probably will give you clear instructions what they want to have. And you'll have to do that. Then this is a legit thing. This is how to do it. The next thing, this is how to do it, is in a learning environment. This is how to do it so that you learn how to do something like that you learn the mechanics, that you learn how many people will probably because we all have there's and we mentioned that, or we talked about that a million times, right? The rules in photography, the rules in photography are just things that the way we perceive the world. And so some clever people found out, okay, this is how we can describe it so that we can communicate more effectively. So they're basically guidelines how to communicate something more effectively. So the rule of thirds works if we want to communicate something in a very specific way. If we want to if we want to communicate in a different way, then don't use that freaking rule of thirds. Then use something else. So these are the only two legit reasons to tell someone how to do something: is either I want it that way and you have to deliver it, or do it so that you learn how to do it, that this becomes part of your toolbox in photography or whatever you're doing.
So,
So let me check.
screen sharing, share screen.
Photo tells me, yeah.
Uh, oh shit! I have so much stuff, but never mind. So, wow. So, let's get this on YouTube one last time, because it's some of it's really cool, and then I think we should leave.
Mhm. So,
Silence is so key.
I shared Bud's, comment. He wrote that, sometimes I don't see it right away, absolutely the same. After I sit and come back to it, But if the photo is not there, no matter how much you want to do, there's nothing there. Exactly. So there's this thing. I mean, here we are at rules again. Yes, we can compose a shot, right? And it will work because this is just the way how we see things, right? But sometimes and then I look at the photo and at home and I see, okay, I want to make something very different out of that. Now that I've I'm not in the moment, I see something very different in the photo, and let's see what if I can carve that out of the photo. But I can only carve it out if it is in there.
Right.
If it's not in, I can't do anything, right? If I can't make a great photo out of a bad shot. It's not possible.
Well, and it goes back to Stephen King's statement about writing. You can't, if you're a good writer, you can't create, but you're not a great writer, or let's say you write science text, you can't create art. You could if there's something there, but if it's not there, it's not there. I just want to close, and I'm not going to say anything else. James's comment about the photo taken by a Hoover would suck.
Probably. Oh,
That's
now
so funny.
now I get it. Hey, I'm not a native
So
speaker.
yeah, I'm not saying
Took a
anything else.
long time.
Thank you. We've
Wow.
been on for over an hour and
Yeah,
40
we'll
minutes.
close with that. So,
Yeah.
wow, I totally didn't see it. I read it and I totally didn't see it. This is amazing. So, yeah, we'll leave with that. Thank you so much for being in this with us. It's always has been a pleasure. And you probably saw that the whole lockdown thing didn't bring us down. At least not me, even though I haven't been online quite quite haven't been
Yeah.
on in the last 2 weeks. But I'll promise to come back.
Well,
So
but I've been online for work. So yeah.
I asked my boss, can I do home office? And he said, no problem. Just move in here. Bring a tent. So
All righty. So
yeah.
I wanted to suggest something. I was telling Pete, some friends of mine and I have had two cocktail parties so far on Zoom, and I was wondering if maybe let's say next Saturday around the same time, we just have a Zoom cocktail party. You can join
Yeah.
in with just audio. You can join in with video. It's not going to be. I mean, I will record it, but I will not share it unless everybody agrees. Um, but just to have a hangout, just to talk, because this is great,
It's
although it's just
isn't
Pete
it
and me.
it's
But it
Easter
would be nice to hear everybody else, and
it's
just
Easter
have a
Saturday.
conversation.
It's Easter Saturday, right? Next Saturday. It's Easter
I'm
Saturday.
Catholic
We
light. I'm
can't
Cuban. I don't know about these
we
things.
can't
Catholic light. Sorry.
I'm an atheist and I know that. See?
Well, you're
Uh
an asshole, but that's a whole other story.
yeah, that's a whole different story. That would be a cool Twitter handle, atheist asshole. God, I hate Twitter. I don't really post there and I just follow things and it's just that's
Not
it's
even.
wow, that's a cesspool. Twitter is a cesspool. Twitter has a culture. It seems that Twitter has a culture that people brag about in their descriptions who blocked them. Blocked by that is Twitter. Amazing.
Yeah, yet another reason not to go to Twitter at all.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, but let's have
okay.
the cocktail party. So you'll send the invites, right?
All right, I'll post instructions so that I'll share the okay, and I'll set it up.
Cool. So
All right.
there's it. Thank you all. It was a pleasure. Next time we'll probably be a bit more serious than
No.
today,
Uh and maybe invite someone.
and maybe
Who I
invite
was thinking
someone.
huh, Yeah, I was thinking. There's a couple of people. I'll talk to you about some other time because I need to go to the bathroom.
The bathroom, which has become, yeah, okay. Thank you all on the chat. I hope I mentioned, oh yeah, I mentioned everyone. I hope I didn't forget anyone. So thank you all. Bye bye till next time. Maybe see you at Fern's Zoom cocktail party. Yeah, that's it. End the broadcast. Bye bye. End broadcast.